based on time on this, we don't have to look for information. It's just everything that comes anything else. These are companies plug along. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Steve's not on the bill. Steve's right. He's like, yeah, maybe whatever you can. So, we start customer bills. We can't serve people.
All right, I think we're going to get started. I know most of you have been up all night, so we'll try to bring break first. I was asked if I would come today and introduce Mayor Slay. And can you hear me?
No, is it on?
It might not be on.
Anybody have any
experience
in technology?
Of course, now the other microphone has problems today. Or the speakers.
Switch.
Yeah, that's better.
Top left corner on
All right, yeah, I
All right,
think it's
can you
there.
hear me now? All right. All right, you really missed what I said. Brilliant, so. Well, anyway, good morning and welcome. I know a lot of you have been up all night, and my name is Tom Rubin, and I am the Executive Director of Civic Progress, and we're sponsoring this event because we're really happy that you're here, and we're really even more enthused about what you're trying to accomplish. I was asked if I would come and introduce Mayor Slay. Now, the interesting thing about that, I said, absolutely, I will come down on a Saturday morning and introduce my friend Mayor Slay. I've known Mayor Slay for probably 30 years. And I have to tell one very quick story about him. Before he was Mayor Slay, he was Alderman Slay. And I was working for the mayor at the time. And one of the, I worked at the Board of Aldermen. And whenever an alderman would say to me, gee, I really haven't decided about the bill, let me read it, that was sort of a brush off. They really had no intention of ever reading the bill. So the mayor got elected to the Board of Aldermen from the 23rd Ward. And I went down to see him, and he was this young attorney, and there was a bill that we had, and I said, you know, Francis, could we count on your support? And he said, well, I have to read the bill. And I thought, oh my God, he's been here 2 days, and he's having to read it. And I went back to the Board of Aldermen, and he was in a back room, and he was doing something I had never seen anybody do. He was actually reading the bill. And he had several questions about, you know, how it was drafted and so on and so forth. So my point is that this has been, you know, sort of one of the most responsible people that has ever shown up in the city of St. Louis to work for us. He is the first person in the history of the city. There's been a lot of great mayors be elected to a 4th consecutive term, and I think that speaks very well. And he has not had an easy time. Things have changed dramatically in terms of the world's finances, in terms of pensions. He's got an awful lot of tough issues he's got to deal with. And you don't hear a lot of drama, and the reason you don't hear a lot of that is because he does his job very, very well every single day. In the civic business community, we will start a Mayor Slay for Life petition. We'd like him to stay as long as he's able to do that. But honestly and truly, he is somebody that I think if any of you from out of town thinking about coming to St. Louis, the city is in very, very good hands. So without any further ado, Mayor Francis Slay.
Well, thank you, and good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on an early Saturday morning. I know many of you have been, some of you are not here, have been up a good portion of the night working on a lot of things, as I understand. But it is a pleasure to be here at Build for STL for the National Civic Day of Hacking, the hackathon. When I was first asked to come here, I'm kind of wondering what it was, and then somebody said that Tom Irwin was going to be here and introduce me. I didn't know what to do because I want to figure out, one of the things I wanted to ask though, is if there's some kind of technology, something you guys can all come up with to make me look like him when I'm his age, or even now. He's got one of the best shape I've ever seen anybody. He runs Ironman and all those other things. So Tom does a great job for Civic Progress, and it's a great organization. He's, as you know, the top companies in St. Louis that work to help make St. Louis a better place in a lot of ways. They get together and look at issues, and that's what you're doing. And I can tell you that, you know, as a mayor, what I like most about my job is I really get to work with a whole lot of people who care deeply about our city and are trying to find ways and working toward finding ways to make St. Louis a better place for more people. I mean, that's what this is about. This job is about people, and it's about people who care about people. And when I learned about this, I can't say that I was necessarily surprised, but I had no idea until I was invited to come here what was actually going on here in St. Louis, and I know in other parts of the country as well. And I'm told that of all the hackathons that's going on around the country, we represent about over 10%, about 12% of that effort here in St. Louis alone, which really speaks volumes for the organization here and for all you're doing. But educating and empowering people to get involved in the community and in a different way, in a different light, but also trying to create the tools necessary to improve the quality of life and make St. Louis a better place is really, and using technology, promoting technology to get that done is very, very exciting to me. A lot of people are out there trying to figure out how they're going to use technology to make money, and that's great, you know. But to use it to you know, give somebody, figure out a way to give somebody a hand up that needs it in the community, to help try to support, you know, some charitable efforts that are going on. I know there was an effort and program last year that was put together to help try to address the homeless situation and connect people who are homeless to shelter beds in the community. And I've heard some other things that are being talked about here as well today. But I just wanted to come here to thank the sponsors, to thank Build for STL, to thank all the participants and the organizers for putting this together, and for all you're doing, not only in this effort, but all you're doing in your own lives and in your own communities and in your own neighborhoods to help improve the quality of life for other people, because that's what this is all about. If more people were thinking about what we can do individually and collectively to help those who need help and to come up with ideas to create a better environment for more people, a more welcoming environment, a more an environment that is one where, you know, people have better and more access to opportunities to help themselves. If more people were thinking about that and doing it, we'd have a much better world. So thank you for what you're doing. I wanted to come by here specifically this morning, once I learned about what this was all about, to say hello, to thank you, to encourage you to continue your efforts, and let you know that city government's here to help in any way we can. So thank you all for what you do, and with that, what do we do now? We pass it on? Or
Yeah, we're going to have Jeremiah's going to talk about the Code for America and why that's important. We're going to be launching later this weekend. We'll be formally launching our Code for America Brigade. Jeremiah is a code.
In typical demo fashion, we're going to have a second year PDFs, PGAs, and other things all set up. Good morning. It's humid. From San Francisco. You don't know what this humidity thing is, really. So, cool. Is there a way I can advance it, or?
You could
Should I
tell
just
me.
point to you? I'll point to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually nice. I don't believe you. But sentiment. There we go. Awesome. So good morning, St. Louis. As I just said, I'm from San Francisco, and if you've never been to San Francisco, it's honestly one of the most magical places. Of course, I'm insanely biased. You know, there's Bay, right? If you could advance it again, there's nice rolling hills, lots of nature, this glorious fog that we affectionately call Carl. If you want to advance it again. And I truly love San Francisco. I lived there my whole life. I love what it is. I love the people that are there. And I love that many people think it's stunningly beautiful from afar. But when you walk around San Francisco, it is not so beautiful. There's lots of trash everywhere. It's one of the dirtiest places I've ever been in my entire life. And this is kind of one of my problems. And so what I did, and I have a hypothesis about why there's so much garbage here. I think it's because there's not very many garbage cans. And this seems like a pretty natural connection. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to provide a data-driven argument to City Hall to try and get more garbage cans so we have less garbage. And so what we did is we built trashspotter.com at the San Francisco Brigade. So a couple of us over the course of a couple of weeks basically said, how can we enlist, mostly ourselves, but our friends to help us build up a geo-aware database of all the trash cans and the litter in San Francisco. This is obviously St. Louis, but the app helps us locate all the trash cans in the city because the city was not willing to give us the shape file that had all the trash cans, you know, because that would make life easy. So basically, we wanted to go through and validate our hypothesis. Interestingly enough, our hypothesis was false. It's not necessarily due to a lack of trash cans. There's, of course, in any civic issue, a number of factors that go into it. It's a complex thing. But what was cool about this was that 3 of us were able to test this hypothesis without any real interaction with the city of San Francisco and kind of move forward on our own. And this group of people who came together was the San Francisco Brigade. We call ourselves Code for San Francisco. And if you don't know what a brigade is, that's cool. We're launching one here today. So let me tell you what they are. They're made up entirely of community members like yourselves who want to work on projects that make their cities better. And in fact, the name comes from one of Ben Franklin's first civic innovations, the bucket brigade. In 18th century Philadelphia, most houses were wood. Lots of people used heating oil, and those 2 things lead to fires, which sucks, especially when there's no fire department. So what happened is Ben Franklin and a couple of his other civically minded friends got together and started what became the Union Fire Company, but started out as Philadelphia's Bucket Brigade. And in the absence of a more formal firefighting system, they came together to solve an issue that was affecting them in their neighborhoods. And that's exactly what brigades do. Cool. And so, of course, we're better at fighting fires now in 2014. I hope so, at the very least. But there are so many other pressing issues that our communities have to address and that we see on a daily basis. And the city just can't deal with them all. There's so many, they're so complex. And to be honest, a lot of times it's better for us to deal with them as neighborhoods, as community members, because we're the people directly affected. So across the world, there are 76 brigades. That's pretty awesome. So now St. Louis is in this community of 76 other groups of people, of over 10,000 people across the world, who are only interested in improving their communities through technology and through coming together and building things. And so, this might sound all corny and fluffy and whatever, but the thing is that I've seen brigades do amazing things. I'm a member of the San Francisco Brigade, and I'm also a Code for America Fellow with the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, which has its own brigade called Open Chattanooga. And we've done a number of awesome things through those organizations. And I kind of want to share what that means with you. You're starting today's day 1 of Open Data STL as a brigade. And what's really awesome about a brigade is there's no right way to do it. There's a lot of models for what has been done well, and we're going to cover a couple of those. But it's up to y'all. It's whatever you want to do to help St. Louis become a better place to live. So let's actually talk about all those different ways, those different models that we've seen across this group of 76. So one model is to work really closely with the city on various things. This is, if you go to this URL, I'm not sure if y'all can read it, it's avlbudget.org. This is the Asheville Brigade, and they did a similar thing to the Oakland Brigade. And raise your hand if you've ever read a municipal city budget. That is painful stuff. That is not a fun Friday night activity. But what's really fun about technology is that we can do visualizations that help us understand things in a more clear way. And so what the city actually asked the brigade to do is build a budget visualization to help the city explain where all the revenue is coming from and where all the expenses were going. And you'd be amazed at what happens when someone understands that they pay $150 a year into a fund that makes sure that all children can go to school. When you break it down like that, it starts to get really, really cool. And people start to stop complaining so much and stop having the you work for me directly mentality. And they start to say, well, we're all in this together, which in fact, we are. Right. There's another way to do this, which is invite the city to come out to the hack nights and just see what falls out. And if I can recommend any model, this is one that I really think is awesome. So what happened is, in Chicago, they have this amazing brigade. It's got hundreds of members. It's actually got revenue built into it through training, technology trainings. This is an amazing organization. And what happens is every week on Tuesday nights, they have a hack night. And the city Department of Health came out and said, you know what would be really cool is if you could use some data we have and help people find out where they can get free flu shots. And this is something that Google does now, but this was before Google had this built into Google Maps. And so in just a couple weeks, one dude, Tom Campari, built an app called Get a Flu Shot for Chicago. And it was deployed, and it was awesome, and it worked really well. They had hundreds of people come check it out. But here is where the level that 76 organizations across the world really start to get into compounding awesomeness. So in the winter of 2012-2013, Boston, not Chicago, Boston had a flu outbreak so severe that the mayor declared a state of public emergency. And they needed a tool to help people understand where they can get flu shots. It was a huge problem. Now they could contract it out. They could ask the internal IT department to build it. They could do all these things. Most likely, those things would not solve the problem in the time frame that was needed. But what they could also do is call up the Chicago Brigade through the Boston Brigade and say, hey, you remember that flu shot app? Can we have that link to the GitHub repo so we can redeploy it? And within 36 hours of the initial phone call, there were thousands of Bostonians checking where to get their flu shot. So that's kind of this community that we get to participate in as brigade members, and it's freaking awesome. Correct? Thank you. There's another model which works in smaller cities, and I'm not sure it's appropriate for St. Louis, but I don't really know St. Louis that well, and it's up to you guys to decide, which is advising the city. I'm sure if any of you worked, those of you who don't work in city government day-to-day, but everyone else, have you worked with the government or interacted with the internal workings of City Hall very much? It can be frustrating to bridge that technological gap. There's lots of things that we understand in modern software development that the government just doesn't understand because they've never been exposed to it. But hey, we're here, we're trying to help. And so what Code for Burlington and Vermont did is they set up office hours for any elected official to come through and ask any question about technology, open data, anything related to what the brigade is doing. And they've had a couple stop through. I mean, it's a small town. So. Right, if you wouldn't mind. This is a pretty cool one because this is what we did in Chattanooga, in my opinion. We wrote policy. And so actually today, hopefully in a couple hours, just a few hundred miles south, Chattanooga mayor will sign this executive order for an open data policy, which is the first open data policy in Chattanooga. And what's cool is the brigade wrote it. So we actually got together on GitHub. For those of you who don't know what GitHub is a way to share source code. And if you think about it, laws are kind of source code that compile on the infrastructure of City Hall instead of the infrastructure of the computer. And so what we did is we, over 3 months, worked together to open up issues, open pull requests, and actually build a collaborative piece of legislation that will hopefully contribute to more open data in Chattanooga. So of course you can always write policy. Doesn't mean it'll always be enacted, but you can always write policy as a stepping stone to moving forward. Brett? And this is the one that I think is the basic and that I highly encourage, and I've seen the difference that I've seen in high-functioning brigades and less high-functioning brigades is the frequency with which they all meet. We're all busy people. We're all doing a lot of things. We're also trying to improve the city of St. Louis. And if you come together regularly, you'll be able to form those connections and actually work on projects. So you can invite, I highly recommend having weekly hack nights. If you can, follow Oakland's model, and actually have them inside City Hall, which is pretty fantastic. And a lot of times when I talk about Code for America and hack nights, there's this interesting dichotomy that happens because there's a lot of non-technical folks. If you're non-technical, would you mind raising your hand? So we even have them right here in the inaugural meeting of Open Data STL. And I mean, it's in the name Code for America. And a lot of times people say, well, I'm not technical. What can I contribute to Code for America or Open Chattanooga or Open Data STL? And of course, there's a whole bunch of ways they can contribute. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited that St. Louis is calling itself Open Data STL. A lot of issues we have as a national organization is based on the fact that we call ourselves Code for America. And by saying Open Data STL, you're really showing more that non-technical people can get involved. So let me actually tell you how those non-technical people can be super powerful members of your brigade, and you should recruit them ad infinitum. So non-technical people are generally really good at telling cool stories. And cool stories should not be underestimated. What we do here and what we do in brigades is super hard to understand for a lot of people, and you need to put it in context. I could have gotten up here and said that a couple of my friends at the brigade in San Francisco and I built an app in 3 days and whatever. But that's not the point, right? The point was to collect information about trash cans. So you have to get together and tell your purpose and what you're actually doing so people, regular people, can understand it. Imagine you're trying to talk to your grandma. And Tim O'Reilly, who's a media mogul, publisher dude, and an advisor to Code for America, likes to make the point that, in government, can a lot of times treat itself like it's the only option, right? A lot of people say government's a monopoly, whatever, they can't do anything else. And that's mostly true. There are things that no one else can do besides government. No one else can collect your taxes, for instance, or issue you a driver's license. But there is an alternative, and it's called apathy, and it's terrible. And so what we can do as brigade members is we can get together and show people that the city government actually does cool things, but better yet, when we come together as a community, we can do really cool things for the neighborhoods that compose the city. And so it's important to have storytellers. So, project management. Also something totally suited for non-technical people and technical people alike. In my previous life, I was a project manager, and it's a lot like herding cats. And especially in a volunteer group like the Brigades, it's very difficult. And so having someone who has that clear vision of where we all have agreed to go and how we're going to get there is super important. So another thing is we shouldn't operate in a vacuum. We all have skills that we want to contribute to St. Louis. That's why we're here. But we don't know what the real issues are. Like last night when we were discussing what we were going to build for Metro, we had an interesting discussion where when we asked Metro what they wanted, they gave us something completely different than what we were talking about beforehand. And that's important. We can't just build things that aren't going to be used for a number of reasons. One, burnout. It's real and it's serious, and if all of us burn out, there will be no more open data STL because it's community driven. But two, you can build things, and when you bring the city in and you build it for them, like Chicago did with the Flu app, or Boston did subsequently, they're going to deploy it. They love having free software. That's amazing. So they're going to deploy it. So when you bring in the people to actually hear the issues, you can make a lot of impact. We like to overestimate the value of code, of computer code. Code is great, but code isn't necessarily accessible to everybody. But content definitely is. And so in Chattanooga, we have something called Local Wiki, just a wiki for the city. But there's a whole bunch, going back to storytelling, you need content to get your stories out there. You need content for documentation. You need content for mission statements. So you need content perhaps about the city if you're doing a content-heavy application. There's one Code for America application called Honolulu Answers. It was built in the Honolulu Fellowship, and it's just a search box. What do you want to know about Honolulu? And people look for, the most sought after issues had to deal with wild feral pigs. which is apparently a large issue in Honolulu. But nonetheless, that had to be written, and all those articles had to be written, and that doesn't require any sort of technical knowledge whatsoever. So we can all bring people in. In fact, in Chattanooga, what we do is we go to senior centers when we're traveling there and go and try and record all the information that those people have in their heads and put it on the wiki. So there's ways to bring non-technical folks in around content. And the last one, and my personal favorite, is research. So, you know, in Code for San Francisco, we do a lot of research. We cataloged all the evictions that are happening. San Francisco got a large eviction problem at the moment. A lot of evictions that are happening. We mapped them. We then went and collected all the stories of the people who were being evicted. We called it the Eviction Mapping Project. Or, you know, you can map physical objects, like, for instance, trash cans. Of course, you can also go ahead and figure out why are some of these problems the way they are. Like, is there a policy reason from the past that is creating the problem today? And all of this requires research and does not require any sort of code writing whatsoever. So there's a number of ways you can get involved. But here's the real thing, is that now that you're here, you don't really have a license to complain about what's wrong with St. Louis. And I don't have a license to complain about what's wrong with San Francisco. And I definitely don't have a license to complain about Chattanooga, because we can all fix it. That's the coolest thing. We don't have to sit here. This is not a political action committee. We don't have to get people elected. That's not our goal. Our goal is simply to fix the problem with technology. And so what we can do in a matter of a couple days is inordinate when you think about what people thought when they were constructing the city government of St. Louis. The thought that they could get an app from Chicago to help them map flu clinics was just unthinkable. And so, in closing, if this is really your jam, if you love open data and you like this idea and it just excites you tremendously to work with city governments across the country, or even just here in St. Louis, to try and open up information, make it more accessible, get more community members involved, then I highly recommend applying for the Code for America Fellowship. So that's the program I'm a part of right now. It's a one-year program. Don't worry, you do get paid. And basically what happens is you get matched with the city hall across the country, and you go there and work there for a year to dramatically improve the community through technology. And so the application opens on Sunday, it ends on July 15th. I'd be more than happy to answer any and all questions about that, or about the brigade in general. But I wish you the best of luck, and I'm super excited to get back to hacking on our project for Open Data STL. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Brett Lorkensteele, one of the co-organizers of this event. So with all that motivation, I figure you're all ready to get back to hacking. Thank you very much for any viewers back on the stream, and thank you to everybody for coming out today. And check out our schedule on the website. We've got tons of training events, workshops, build events, and everything else going on today. So even if you're not here to code on the project and want to take a break, there's plenty more that we have for you today to participate in. Thanks for being here.